Yeah, you actually you write a lot of interesting things in the book about emotions and feelings, such as feeling or emotion is very much muddled by the fact that emotion and feeling are so closely allied that only rarely, if ever, are they wholly separate. So, how do you separate or distinguish feelings from emotions? How do you understand this? I think this is really interesting.
Yeah, I have an answer which I'm comfortable with, but I will preface it by saying I'm still working on this because I'm a human being, and these I don't think these unless you're a very advanced practitioner of one of the great traditions. I don't even in them. I don't know if this ever goes away entirely. Somebody, probably Jung, said, "You don't have emotions. Emotions have you." So let's do it from a quasi Jungian point of view, insofar as I can be a quasi Jungian. Emotions are experienced as coming on. You're not in control. Think of the last time you got really angry, or sadly, even really happy. you know, Anything that just nails you. You're stunned. You're furious. And you act out because that's how I feel. And Pema Chodron, very helpfully says, "Well, just why don't you chill for a little bit, and see if you can breathe through it," which is very, 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 very hard to learn. You know, so from a Jungian point of view, when you're moved like that, you're being the victim of a complex. You know, uh, complexes have you. I have a small personal anecdote to tell about that. Um, Feeling, on the other hand, for Jung, is one of the two. What does he call them? I think he calls them rational functions. Thinking and feeling are rational because feeling is evaluative. You can't do an evaluation when you're in the complex, which is whatever, when you're in the throes of passion, either positive or negative. That's not a really good time to evaluate. you know, it's why love often goes wrong. I mean, you're just so passionately besotted with this other person, and we have to get married right away. And then you do, and then you suddenly, oops. you know so for Jung, em, certainly emotions and feelings are closely allied because they're all sort of physiologically linked. But feeling is more of the heart. Oh, can't do this podcast without the thought of the heart, which is the title of that
It's a
essay by
great, great, it's a
Hillman.
great title, actually. I was looking at that. I was like, this is
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah, and this is one of the best places to bring it in. Um, there, where does it come from? Well, Hillman's draw. If there's a source besides Corbin for Hillman to use this, I'm not immediately aware of it because Corbin uses it because there's an Arabic word hima, which he uses for the heart, which is you want to be thinking from your heart. Yeah, I'm getting old and I've written a lot, so I have these little set pieces. And here's another one that it was really useful. Jung was visiting the Taos Pueblo in New Mexico, of all strange things, in the 1920s, I think. And he tells a little anecdote about that, where the chief of the Taos Pueblo is talking to him, and he says, "Oh, we think they're all crazy." And Jung said, "Why do you think they're crazy?" And he says, "Well, they're always wandering around and they got squinty eyes and they're always looking for something. And we have no idea what they're looking for. They're so frantic and we don't know what they're after. And he says, we're pretty sure they're crazy. And Jung says, well, why are they crazy, though? And he says, oh, well, they say they think with their heads. At which point Jung says, whoa, that's intense. Well, where do you think? And the chief says, oh, we think here, tapping his chest. So there's two things. What were they looking for? They were looking for their hearts. From a Corbinian, maybe Jungian perspective, the whole problem with the crazy Western psyche is that it's all jammed up inside our heads. And if we were, in general, as a culture, a little more able to think with our hearts, and how many spiritual traditions have this as a metaphor? I know for a fact, that an abstract theorist, either in biology or philosophy or physics, no, I better not say that. I was going to say that let's not generalize. I know that I have felt much of my life as if I was jammed up inside my head. And less so now. And I am much more able to do the feeling function, which is not located in your abstract capacities. It's located more near where your emotions arise, but you don't want that to happen. I mean, it will, but then you want it to cool down so you can say, was that guy really just being a bastard to me and I should have punched him? That's the feeling function, Yeah, I probably should have, but in the moment, there's no way to think about it. So you want to feel with that, and that's the kind of move that Corbin is all about. He says, right at the beginning of Spiritual Body and Celestial Earth, that the imagination has been given to the poets in Western thought, and he doesn't mean imagination in some heady sense. We even think, as we think of thought as being in our heads, I mean, I do at least, think of imagination as, oh, well, where is that? It's kind of in my, I don't know, it's my head. Well, where would it be? As my brain is. And Corbin and all his spiritual masters say, oh, no. You got to migrate that down. And that is a physiological possibility. When I'm, here's public self-analysis is what I do all the time. Every once in a while, my voice will drop a few, not an octave, but my voice will drop down into a lower register. And I always think, I've got it. And then it goes back up. Every once in a while, things start to relax a little bit. And you think, oh, now I've got it. But okay, that's where it is. It's down there. And then you can, I mean, these are two stories. These are kinesthetic and proprioceptive movements of the soul, if you want to put it that way. You can really feel it. In one of my classes, we read a book that just blew me away a few months ago. It's a book by a musician and theoretical physicist. His name is Stefan Alexander, and he's at Brown University. And the book is called The Jazz of Physics. And I was teaching a course kind of about music, because music is a crucial, absolutely central metaphor for Henri Corbin. He says, without music, you can't have spiritual transformation, because the whole world is musical. So we were reading this book, and Stefan Alexander, he's got the chops. First of all, he's a real, honest to God, jazz musician, and he's also a black man. So that gives him credibility in the jazz world. And also, you got to say, in the world of almost exclusively white male theoretical physicists. This guy's good. He wouldn't be where he is. And he said, first of all, he tells the story about Albert Einstein, who was asked, well, so where'd your ideas for relativity come from? Einstein says, well, actually, no, they're musical ideas. Oh, shit. you know, Story has it that, Einstein would be working away on relativity and stuff, and he'd get stuck and he'd go play the piano for a while. There's more. The book is spectacularly illuminating, but one of the things that Alexander says is, well, I'm a pretty competent quantum physicist, and I work in these higher dimensional spaces. And there's this diagram that John Coltrane drew in the '60s for Yusef Lateef, and it's in musical space. It's a circular diagram with all these notes and things on it. And so really, really highly sophisticated musicians like Coltrane, who understand the ins and outs of music, they're moving in a higher dimensional musical space. I mean, they really are. F sharp is over here, B flat is over here, and they're working in a space. And if you've ever done any abstract thought in any kind of, this just is second nature. You start pretending you can work in high dimensional spaces, and that gives you all sorts of possibilities for movement. So Coltrane is thinking, wow, this is really cool, and here's what I'm working off. And he tries to draw this diagram for Yusef Lateef, and Alexander says, I was looking at that. I was comparing his diagram to some of the spaces I work with in quantum mechanics, and he says, they kind of fit. They're kind of analogous. And he says the wonderful thing about that, besides the fact it makes the hairs on your arms stand up, is that they don't quite fit. And that's where creativity happens. Right? So either you're doing your abstract quantum mechanics equations, or you're playing jazz, and you're kind of looking at both of those worlds. And when you're in between, where the analogies aren't perfect, where nothing will quite reify, that's where new things appear. I just can't imagine anything more exciting than that as an intellectual construct for creative imagination, because it's got everything you would want, if you're me anyway. It's got sophisticated music, which I've never learned. It's got sophisticated mathematics, which I've never learned. And it's got creativity, and it's all imagination, and the thing is, this was the deal about the thought of the heart, that it's kinesthetic. Even the most abstract thought that you think could have nothing to do with your body turns out to have everything to do with your living, breathing, moving body. And philosophy has never, until the 20th century, has never paid any attention to that. And some of that is what Hillman and Corbin and Jung were trying to get back.
Yeah, it's amazing that they were kind of tapping into that insight, and now you have the cognitive science where that cognition is embodied. It's all in the body. The other thing that I was thinking about was this sense about this idea about the feeling function being underdeveloped with the thinking function. And it's interesting the way I'm thinking about it is I was having a conversation with somebody about emotions and becoming more emotionally attuned and more receptive to the emotions that you're having. And there was a fear of if I become too sensitive to emotions, then I'll get too emotional or something. And now it's what I'm realizing, it's almost like when that feeling function is underdeveloped, that's when you're either repressing, or you're becoming merged, identifying with the emotion, and you're not actually feeling. So when the feeling function gets developed, you're actually able to feel in your body what's there. and allow it to process and move through you. And you get this capacity to be with more of experience and more flavors rather than like, oh, I gotta stay
Yes,
here.
yes, yes. That is absolutely right. Yeah, yeah. No, it's absolutely right. If you develop your feeling function, you won't get more emotional. I mean, I think the thought is that you'll get less emotional because it'll become obvious how how uninteresting these emotions really are. You know, they sort of eat everything up and they're just one thing. And they seem so obviously desiring to be reified. And then if, as you were saying earlier, if you just chill for a minute, they kind of go away on their own, at least they can, you know, and then you think, well, gee, what was that all about?